Today we are down in Winchester and we're currently sat in the Southdown Social Cafe, and today I've been joined by Specialized Ambassador Alan Murchison, because this is a man who has ridden over 70 Specialized bikes. He has an in-depth knowledge of the S-Works SL7 and has recently taken delivery of the SL8. So the question that I'm asking him is, what is the difference between the two? We've been out on the roads to do some real-world data testing. It's a little bit ghetto, it's a bit of a car park test, but it is going to give us some numbers to have a look at to see how these two really perform. I think a really good place to start actually is just going to be looking at the similarities between both of these bikes, because this is the 8th generation of the Tarmac, so it is another iteration of it, and that means that there are a lot of similarities. And I think one of the key ones actually is just the shape of the frame. They're still sticking with the drop seat stays. The frame shape itself actually hasn't changed all that much, and the geometry is identical. It's also meant that comfort of the bike, I think, is also going to be quite similar. Specialized did quote that there was a 6% improvement in compliance at the saddle. When you've ridden this bike, your short experience with it so far, could you feel any difference in comfort between the two bikes?
Nah.
No.
Real
I think 6% is a very small margin.
6%, I couldn't feel any real difference. It just felt really, really responsive without being mega stiff. Because normally you say, well, it's responsive. That means stiff, and stiff means uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It seems responsive, but it doesn't feel like you're riding a plank of wood, for example.
The only other similarity that I can really draw from this bike actually is the fork of the bike really replicates that of the Venge fork. I'd say the two between the SL7 and the SL8, I think they're actually quite different. The SL7 fork is a bit more circular and actually a bit narrower, whereas the SL8 fork is definitely flatter and a bit longer. They've really dialed in the aero at the front of the bike.
I think the other thing is the head tube as well.
Yeah.
There's a chunk there, and that's more reminiscent of the Venge. So when I first saw this bike, it looked quite odd because it looked very front heavy, because it was built up at the front and then very, very small rear stays. And I wasn't convinced about the aesthetics of it. Whereas when you see it built up, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Looking at the price and weights of the bikes on offer, an interesting picture emerges. Not only is the SL8 now cheaper compared to the SL7 in certain builds, but now you don't need the S-Works SL8 to beat the S-Works SL7 in weight. The difference between the top-end SL7 and SL8 is a claimed 120 grams. However, the lower-grade 10R carbon version of the SL8 is just 100 grams heavier than the S-Works version. So if you want a bike as light as the S-Works SL7, then opt for the cheaper variant of the SL8 and then build it up in a matching spec.
I was really surprised at how fast the SL7 was. Climbing it was considerably faster than anything else. Where the Venge came into its own was once you started getting over 50k an hour, like dual carriageway stuff, which is rare. Let's be brutally honest. We all have delusions of riding everywhere at 50k an hour. It's not something that any of us do on a regular basis. So the Venge was still very, very fast, above 50k an hour, but rolling A roads, climbs, the Tarmac was just fast from the box. It was a really, really fast, easy to get on with bike, and it felt fast. And then the numbers, the little test that we did, it proved to be really fast on the road. Just day-to-day riding, it's fast.
So just run us through, what did that test consist of in terms of the parkour?
It was a climb, an 800-metre climb. It was a couple of K of rolling, bumpy A-road, sort of mixed surface, and then there was 5K of dual carriageway. So a little bit of everything, nothing too technical. And I was looking for repeatability as well. So I did it on a bit of road that I think, according to Strava, I've done over 700 times. So I know the road, and we did it based on heart rate and power. Yeah. So we did a run on the Venge, we did a run on the SL7, and we did a run on the SL8. Bikes were pretty much set up the same. They're all running Dura-Ace Di2, power saddles, CLX wheels, tyre setups almost identical. So they were all as close as they could be. Now, one caveat, obviously I like to tinker with bikes. The Venge and the SL7, ceramic bottom brackets, ceramic jockey wheels, wax chains, etc. The SL8, straight out of the box. Like literally no changes at all. So it's got standard bottom bracket, it's got a greased up chain on the factory, and it's got a stack on it like a Big Mac.
35mm of stack there. So, I mean, compared to the SL7, which has 15mm, that's a sizable difference. And I think the other thing as well was that on the SL8, there is no oversized pulley wheel system.
No, it's a standard
completely standard.
Straight out of the box.
Cool. Okay, so run us through some of the numbers. So first off, we had the Venge, then the SL7, then the SL8.
Yeah.
How did the Venge perform?
The Venge was really good.
Yeah.
Today, we had a tailwind on a dual carriageway, which is always going to favour a full aero bike. So climbing, we did a climb. The Venge was climbing 19.9k an hour, and it did the little loop that we did in 10 minutes and 8 seconds, maxing out at 66k an hour. So it was fast. It climbed okay, and it was good, and it felt really stable. So the Venge was good.
Okay, cool. And then the SL7?
SL7 was climbing like an absolute demon. Like, put in context, the same climb, it averaged 20.4k an hour, so half a kilometre an hour faster on a climb that's only like a minute and a half long.
Yeah.
It was almost identical speed. Maxed out at 65k an hour, not quite as fast as the Venge. Was honestly, it was within 1 to 2 seconds. So
to be honest, in the real world, that's kind of negligible differences.
Yeah, it was what you would expect. The SL7 climbed faster. It was faster on the bumpy rolling A road.
Yeah.
The Venge was faster, above 50k an hour. We're not telling anybody anything they're not going to expect.
Exactly.
And if you went to the aero engineers at Specialized and said that to them, they go,
yeah, that makes sense.
That's what you make sense.
For sure.
Then
SL8.
Bog standard SL8. Now, bear in mind, this was the first time I rode this bike today.
Yeah.
So I've done nothing to it.
Yeah.
I went out.
Box
it climbed at 20.6k an hour. So that's 0.2 faster than the SL7 and 0.7 of a kilometre faster than the Venge.
Wow.
Down to fact is, when the climb was flattening off, I was actually going down the gears.
You needed to,
up. It was remarkable. It did it actually 7 seconds faster over 10 minutes.
Okay. And again, very short climb. So as soon as you start to extrapolate that out over something longer, you know, the gains will kind of compound.
It was mad. And it also maxed out at 69k an hour. You know,
so quicker than the Venge.
Quicker than the Venge, and nearly 4k an hour faster than the SL7. Now, bearing in mind, that's running that stack. I can't get down, so it was really, really quick, but it just felt fast. And there's quite a lot of things I can do to make this bike faster and personalise it, but it was fast. So it was faster on the climb.
Yeah.
It was faster max speed, and it was faster A to B. So if you actually put that into context on a 10-minute test section, you go half an hour, 21 seconds over half an hour faster than the SL7. Based on real ghetto aero testing, but it felt comfortable. It felt easy to ride. I hadn't dialed it in at all. There was nothing I'd done. I just rode it.
Yeah. And
it was bloody quick.
Well, okay, I think that's a really important point. I reckon, because in the real world, how many of us are really like accurately tracking? I mean, most people ride bikes because they enjoy riding a bike. Yeah. For a lot of people, it's not all about the data. Sometimes it's about that kind of intangible feel a bike gives you. So in terms of ride qualities, like we were saying, you are so dialed in with the SL7. You really know that bike. Obviously, this is still new to you, but that also means you're going to be able to pinpoint where things are different.
Yeah.
So how does the ride feel compare from the SL8 to the SL7?
Okay, it feels more comfortable and it feels more responsive, which those two things rarely go hand in hand. So if you think comfort, you go Roubaix. Comfortable bike, it's comfortable, you could be on it all day. Yeah. Responsive, you think, I could do an hour and a half, 2 hours on this. That feels comfortable and it feels responsive and it feels fast. Like doing just under 70k an hour. That's
quick.
Pretty fast.
Seriously quick.
On the first time out on a bike. And it was planted, bear in mind, cross tailwind today, so you've got the wind gusting in, it's running the same wheels. There's something they've done with a back end and how it feels. It just feels fast.
So actually, one thing I found with my time with the SL8 is how stiff the bike felt. But I'd be interested to hear from you, how do you think the stiffness compares, not only to the SL7, but also the Venge?
The Venge was always a fairly harsh ride.
Because there was no comfort basically in that bike.
Nah, it was never about comfort. It won a lot of races, but it wasn't as easy to get on with. You know what I mean? You felt tired after it, whereas you could ride the SL7 day in, day out. You could do long days. You could do a training camp. You could do 25 hours in a week, and you wouldn't feel completely battered.
Yeah.
I would defy anybody to do 25 hours on a Venge and not feel tired. It was a ruffled ride.
Yeah.
With this bike, I think immediately it just feels more comfortable. Now, I'm not going to be deluded. It's got a high stock, it's got wide bars. That's always going to feel more comfortable, but it's bloody quick. That shouldn't be quick in that setup for me.
Not at 69k an hour with 35mm of stack. Like, that's really surprising.
It shouldn't be. So you think I take that out and then I will play about with the position a bit. It's good.
If we kind of come away from ride feel and we come away from the numbers, in terms of aesthetics, there's a lot of ethos found within this bike, specifically towards the rear end. What are your thoughts in terms of look?
I like the look. I didn't like it as a frame set when I saw it initially, just because of the bulbous head tube on its own. I wasn't convinced, and it looked very skinny at the end. It looked like almost like a TT triathlon bike at the front and a crit bike at the rear. I thought it's an odd combination.
It kind of looked unbalanced.
But when you have it built up, it looks great. This one's obviously some pearlescent, funky matte white, which that monochrome look is really cool.
It is, yeah.
I love it. So built up, I think it looks ace. I think it looks really good. And it's also gone away from the kind of aerofoil tubes. There's quite a lot of round tubes going on. I like it. So you and I have been privy to some of the data from Specialized, you know, Vaughn 2, Milan San Remo. What does that mean to you, to a man, woman, cyclist in the street?
Not much.
Not an awful lot.
And the thing is, my issue with that data as well is that it is so far extrapolated from a real world race situation.
Yeah.
It's kind of, that just to me feels a bit like marketing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the man in the street that's going to go and buy one of these bikes, what does he or she care about?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that's why I always like to do this ghetto testing, because people look, the tyres or the power meter or the crank length or whatever. That feels fast. Like, I ride my bike a lot. I've had a lot of S-Works, I've had a lot of road bikes. I think that gives you an opinion that's valid.
Yes.
As opposed to saying, well, it'll be however many seconds faster at Vaughn 2, or it'll be X minutes faster than Milan San Remo. None of us are going to race Milan San Remo. Nope. Not this week, I don't think. It's fast, it's easy to ride fast, and I think that's something that's really important. So look at the data that you're going to get from marketing. Yeah. My gut feel, having ridden it, is the numbers we're getting from Specialized marketing downplay how good it is.
Interesting. Okay.
That would be, they've actually erred on the side of caution, in my opinion, because they did it with the SL7. Like, I remember when it came out, they gave us numbers on the SL7, and I did some ghetto testing on that. I was like, nah, it's faster than that. And I spoke to some pretty key people within Specialized. I said, it's actually faster than the Venge. You know, is it? I said, it is. On real roads, as a real person. Yeah. And the problem is if you've got a World Tour Pro testing a bike, or you've got a wind tunnel, right? Neither of those are the real world. No. And having tested,
it's a completely staged situation.
Yeah, and how a World Tour rider will ride a bike with a position, a pedaling technique. Yeah. It's completely, and how they hold their head and how they hold their hands. It's all very different to normal cyclists. Even, you know, people like yourself and I, you know, we love a bike and we ride a bike a lot, but we're not World Tour level cyclists. And then you go to wind tunnels and you get data. A wind tunnel is only part of the parcel. You know, it doesn't take into consideration the texture of the road, how fatigued you are. It's a finite number, but it's a very controlled environment. So I think that's why you've got to ride the bike. And I think I don't know if they're going to run demo bikes or whatever, I'm sure they will, because people go, well, why am I going to change this really good bike? Yeah. That bike's easy to ride real fast. So that's what you've got to say, is these numbers are great, but they're only a guideline. And that's why I would say, get on the bike, ride it, play about with tyre pressures, play about with tyre width, and see how you get on with it.
Obviously, as we said, it's kind of, the speed data is one thing, but it's the ride feel, that's what people are going to care about. And I think we've both experienced the fact that this feels markedly different to the SL7.
It does. And even today, you look, we're going down a dual carriageway, you're hitting 70k an hour with a side tailwind. Yeah. I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt unstable. I felt completely safe battering down the dual carriageway like that. No problem at all. There's not many bikes you could do that on straight out of the box, and it felt really, really fast. And it just feels intuitive as well. So now it's cool, but I'd say use the data numbers as a guideline. Don't use them as a benchmark, because I actually think that the numbers are going to be far better in real life than they are on a paper that's published by marketing.
So there we have it. Now, obviously, I think we do always have to make sure that we take a little pinch of salt when we're speaking to an ambassador, but this is someone who has got a vast amount of knowledge of the SL7 and the Venge and basically every S-Works bike. Let us know your thoughts, though, down below. What do you think of the differences between the SL7 and the SL8? If you enjoyed the video, then please do drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you again very soon.